I'm in the heart of the European Parliament and I will talk to the most important parliamentarians. Welcome to the European Parliament here in Strasbourg. We are delighted that Jens Giesecke is here together with us. If you don't know him, you are not in the Brussels bubble. Because next time when you are going to sit in your car, I promise you, you will think about Jens Giesecke. Because he is the one who is trying to save the automobile industry, the car industry, and thank you so much that you are here. We are delighted at EP, Environment and Public Health Institute, that we have the possibility to talk about cars, about the environment a little bit, and at the end about health. And thank you so much, Mr. Giesecke.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. So, Mr. Giesecke, is the car industry in Europe dying right now?
Dying is perhaps a hard phrase, but of course, obviously, European automotive industry is under huge pressure. And if you take the example just for Germany, there are more than 100,000 very well-paid jobs which we have lost in the last 12 months. So OEMs and suppliers. So the whole sector is under huge pressure. And now we have to check whether the regulation we established in Brussels is proper or if we have to change legislation fundamentally. This is what I think.
Yeah. Over 100,000 jobs. This sounds really dramatic. I have the feeling that many people or many MEPs on the left don't have the same state of urgency regarding the state of the industry. What you are saying to them?
Well, you know, the Commission finally last year, after 1 year of strategic industrial dialogue, made a proposal to help the industry to go back to a more technological neutral path. But of course, obviously, in the House, on the left side of the House, we have many who think, okay, well, perhaps it's just the fault of the industry, own mistakes. And obviously, the industry did not make everything right, and they made mistakes. But not only. And as politicians, we have at least the part where we are responsible. There we have to deliver. So if we can update the legislation, we have to do it. We could not just bring the blame to the industry.
Yes, Mr. Giesecke, this is remarkable because I know that you are one of the few MEPs who's saying also out loud, we made mistakes in the last legislation. What do you mean by that?
I mean by mistake to have a very one-sided political approach, excluding technologies where we were leading and just focusing on electrification only. And that was a huge mistake because in practice we see that it is difficult to compete with Chinese car manufacturers. They have the technology, they have the better energy prices, working conditions are easier. You do not get so much money in China. So we have competitive disadvantages. And now we can perhaps accept the situation, say everything will be Chinese, or we adapt our legislation, not going electrification only, but perhaps to have a broader approach on other technologies and not to say by legislator the end of the combustion engine is 2035 in April.
Okay, you just mentioned many topics. I would go to the combustion engine because we also discussed with Professor Dr. Wechsler before the vote that it is opened again, that the ban is banned, or at least we are more open than we were before. And you were also one of the voices earlier in the process who said, I don't know if this kind of over-regulation is what we need. Is there too much over-regulation?
Overregulation, of course, in general, if we come to regulation, as a Green Deal as such, produced many laws, delegated implementing acts, more than 12,000 pieces of legislation, which was in a bit like a tsunami. But if you go to the automotive industry, it was simply banning a technology, which from a fundamental point of view, I'm not convinced that we as politicians should exclude a technology. So what I believe in is that we have competition between technologies, and if there is an argument for one or the other, it is by scientists, by the producers, perhaps by the clients, by the customer to decide, but not by the politician. I do not want to force the people to buy something, but they should be convinced.
This is so important. I think many people don't understand the state of urgency that we are in. So do we need less ideology and more open-minded, fact, science-based approaches?
You know, ideology is always the wrong approach. But it was very prescriptive. The Green Deal, when they started under Franz Timmermans, he was very one-sided and saying, oh, if you do not reach the numbers, you get a penalty, you get fines. Last year, we managed to avoid fines because simply European car manufacturers, they were not able to comply with the rules. It was over-ambitious. And so we had to change the legislation. Otherwise, our European industry not reaching the goals, and on top, we put additional 12 billion euro as a fine, which is totally stupid.
It's crazy, and I know that you are also very outspoken regarding, for example, truck manufacturers who are also facing these kinds of difficulties. And why is it, though, that on the left spectrum of the conservatives, there is no sense, there are no synapses coming out and saying, okay, we are seeing this kind of state of urgency. We understand that it was too much.
Well, left side of conservatives, the conservatives, the EPP in this house is very united. The left side of the house, they are a bit, they call themselves progressive, but in a way they prepare the ground to have a perfect Chinese business model. So if the left side of the house is willing to protect the interests of our industry and our workers, they should be more open to other technologies. And on combustion engine, we are still ahead of the wave, and we should really safeguard that. You know, it is not the question combustion engine versus electric, but on the combustion engine, you can do a lot of with e-fuels, for example, or for other kind of fuels.
Yes.
Hybrids are part of the solution, and there should be a real competition. Hybrids, plug-in hybrids, range extenders, and electric cars, and then the consumer will finally decide, but not because of a regulation, but because of being convinced.
And what would you say, for example, let's imagine the two of us or you at a table with the family, a father, a mother, and a daughter. And the daughter is a Fridays for Future enthusiast. What is fine? It's great. We are in a free democracy, and you can demonstrate as much as you want. And this is what freedom is about. But the question is, are we going to do our policies regarding the urges of our daughter if the father and the mother are working in the automotive industry?
Of course, that's a difficult example. I very much recognize that people are active and young people work for Fridays for Future. But finally, it is about competitiveness, having an industry in Europe and delivering on climate targets. But if we, for example, deindustrialize, we will not be successful and no one will copy our model. So we have to, in a way, guarantee jobs in our industry. If I defend the interest of the industry, it is on being better on the climate performance as well. So I want to reduce CO2. I do not want to have the cars run by fossil fuel in 2035.
Yes,
but we have
let's
other
be
options.
open.
We have
Yes,
other options.
let's be open.
On the fuels, you have so many different fuels. You have biofuels, you have e-fuels, and you could use this. And the e-fuels, for example, the biofuels, could be produced in Europe as well.
Yeah, and could be produced in Europe. And you mentioned before China and electrical vehicles. Isn't it true that the left, Social Democrats and the Greens should wave also a Chinese Communist Party flag in the moment when they are saying, okay, go 100% electrical because we are dependent on China?
Well, I think, of course, that's a bit provocative, and the Greens will not wave the Chinese flag. But in fact, if we do not change our legislation, you will at least make the Chinese smile because we do so many mistakes. So we should do our homework now. We should optimize the current proposal of the Commission, because the problem is that after 12 months, the proposal is not yet mature. We do have to correct the proposal in order to guarantee that we have a real competition between China and Europe.
What is different right now? Because in the last legislation we spoke about mistakes and the overreaching Green Deal.
Yeah.
Now something has changed in the Parliament. What has changed?
At least the Commission proposal from December last year, the Commission goes in the right direction. They say we do not stick to the 100% in 2035, but we want to have flexibilities and we go for 90%. But the missing 10% should be filled with green steel made in Europe and some biofuels. But on the green steel is a cap of 7%, and on the fuels is 3%, which is not enough. And the problem is that in a kind with this rigid approach of regulation, the Commission says, yes, you may recognize this steel, but you start in 2030, which is a totally wrong approach, because if our industry takes the transformation seriously, what they do, they can have this green steel in 2027 or 2028. So if the steel is ready, it should be recognized.
And what is the worst case scenario if we are not going to continue to act right now?
So if we do nothing now, I think the path is clear, and we will have a Chinese-dominated market, and we will lose big parts of our automotive industry in Europe.
This sounds really dramatic.
It is dramatic, obviously.
Yeah. And what do you think, what are concrete consequences for the people outside sitting at their tables?
But we do not need to talk about concrete consequences. I'm a German member of the European Parliament. I come from Lower Saxony,
yeah.
And Volkswagen announced to fire 30,000 people.
Yeah.
This means 30,000 families. But simply the message from Volkswagen is, we do not have a job for you.
Thank you so much that you also mentioned the 30,000 jobs and the families who are affected by this overreach that we had. I'm happy that you also mentioned Lower Saxony, because I'm also from Lower Saxony. And it's important that people from Lower Saxony also know that they are well represented here in the European Parliament in Strasbourg. And let us now shift a little bit, because you not only the coordinator for transport and tourism, you are the chief negotiator for the automotive industry of the biggest political group here. And you are also rapporteur of the recycling directive, auto recycling directive. It's an end-of-life directive known here in the Brussels bubble. What is that about?
It's about recycling and going more in the direction of circular economy. The question of missing cars, of course, if a car comes to an end, we have ambitious targets for climate reduction, but if old cars older than 15 or 20 years, they have a second life in Africa or wherever, then the effect for the climate is quite poor. So we have to address this, and we are in the final negotiations, the final texts, they are fine-tuned. We will decide on this piece of legislation in June in the Parliament here in Strasbourg.
Okay, great. And I have the feeling that you will be somebody who makes sure that as rapporteur, there will be not more red tape, but something where also the businesses can work with?
Yeah, it is of utmost importance that we keep the interest of small and medium-sized enterprises. You could imagine in the car market, there are many small garages and mechanics working on it, and they should not be overburdened with documentation requirement things. We want to have the exchange and the way of purchasing a car, selling a car should be as easy as possible. And if it comes to the industry and to the design, we do not want to put too many burdens. We want to show the direction into circular economy, but not having totally unrealistic targets. So I think we have now a pragmatic and balanced approach which has to be rubber-stamped by the Parliament.
You said unrealistic targets. Who has unrealistic targets?
The Commission was always like, oh, now the recycling quota, plastic recycled content should be more than 30%. But if you do not have more than 5%, you can call it ambition, but it's simply unrealistic.
Yeah.
So we need more realism in the debate.
So the Commission was unrealistic.
It was a bit overambitious.
Overambitious. And is it correct to assume that the EPP and you also on the forefront, somebody who is pushing the Commission to go for less red tape and less overregulation?
Yes, but in a way, this is the headline of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen's second term. We fought hard for that. I was the chairman of the SME, the small and medium-sized circle in the EPP group last term, and we fought 5 years for less regulation, cutting red tape, and now each commissioner has in each mission letter, with in a kind as a mandate of the commissioner to work, this kind of obligation to cut 25% red tape in his portfolio. And that is screened. So we do a monitoring on what the Commission does. We have in Transport Committee Commissioner Tzitzikostas, and he has to give his report on his ambition and where he delivers on cutting red tape. That is for us of utmost importance.
Thank you so much that you are pushing so much that the Commission is delivering, and also regarding within the European Parliament, how the dynamics are there. Did they shift it a little bit after the last votes?
So it goes in the right direction, but it's of course hard work. The European Commission as such, more than 30,000 people, civil servants, but of course their productivity is in a way the production of regulation. So in a way we need them to move. They have to cut red tape, so they do not have to invent another rule, but they have to delete one. And that is difficult because it makes necessary to change your mindset.
But isn't the changing the mindset so important right now?
It definitely is, and this is why we do this hard work. Right after this interview, in 30 minutes, we have a new debate on this question, on cutting red tape, on competitiveness, on one in, one out. For me, it's better to have one in and two out. So if the Commission has a proposal, in advance I have to show these two regulations we deleted, and now we want to invent one new. So at least you have a reduction.
And isn't it also true that after the votes, for example, some of the reduction of red tape that you mentioned, I'm thankful that you mentioned also SMEs, because we also talked with Marion Walsmann about cutting red tapes and what SMEs need, and they don't need more paper, less bureaucracy. And but isn't it also true that we mentioned the combustion engine before, that these changes were only possible with a majority right to the Conservatives, and that this also brings some kind of pressure to Social Democrats and Liberals?
Of course, for me, it is not a question of right or left. I'm convinced that we need modification of the legislation. We need to have a level playing field to save the combustion engine. And so I will simply put the same amendments on the table which I have put earlier. So it's not going to the right or the left direction. It's going to the technical right solution for the industry. And this needs a majority. I do not care. It can be a secret vote. For me, it's just content.
And what you are saying to people who are saying, okay, now the Green Deal is now, they are seeing this change, mindset change.
The Green Deal is just successful if we have a clean industrial deal and if within the transformational process we have safeguards for our jobs. If we have a 100% reduction of CO2 but no jobs, we are successful in Green Deal, but our business model as Europe is at the end. We discussed at that very moment the new funding of the MFR, the multi-financial framework.
Yes.
If member states like Germany suffer and they do not have money, the whole party in Brussels will not be paid.
And what you are saying to those who are saying, okay, we would like to have higher quotas, we would like to have more bans, we would like to have more sanctions to protect the environment?
Yes, you can talk about sanctions and bans, but for example, if you talk about the truck industry and the trailers, they face huge fines if they do not reach the goals for 2030. Simply in our legislation, we were so ambitious that these fines will kill our companies. So the message of the industry is stick to the rule. I will simply leave Europe and produce elsewhere.
But just help me to understand, and also the listeners to understand. So we are killing our own industry with
over-ambitious legislation in the environmental field. Parts of our industry say, okay, this is not realistic. We cannot match these targets. So our only option, you force us to leave Europe. This is what happens. This is why a change is urgently needed.
A change is needed. And last question on this topic, environmental regulations, if they are over-regulated, if there's too much sanctions, too much bans, they are killing our jobs and our industry right now.
Yes, of course. But we talked about those numbers. This happens today, and this is why the change is really needed.
Yeah, true. I'm so delighted to sit here together with you and talk with you. At the end, I would like also to talk about the matter of health, because beforehand you were also involved with, in the past, with envy and health, and there's something called silver economy. What do you think about silver economy and about a more preventive healthcare approach?
Well, silver economy, lifelong learning and to engage with older people. I think we should not stop with 55 or 60 to work, but we should be able to work as long as possible. And work has a value as such. And so if you make it feasible that people can work for a longer period, it's good for the economy, but it's good for the health of the people as well.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and we discussed mindset shifting beforehand with the Green Deal and industry. Do we need a mindset shift regarding the healthcare sector from a reactive approach towards a preventive approach?
I think preventive is very good, but of course, if it comes to health, you have new challenges. On stress, on smartphone, on internet, people are 24 hours on their mobile phones and so on. You have to find solutions to relax and to calm down a little bit.
Yes.
There you need a shift in the mindset, because we do not know how to tackle these problems. I'm a father of 3, and I see with my children, they just from one day to the other, from one month to the other, they even get more addicted to their smartphones.
Yes, and this kind of addiction from the smartphones is also, for example, your children then are also not moving.
Yeah, of course.
If we are looking at social media, your children, we are also not moving, and obesity, cardiovascular diseases are also increasing. And we have right now in the European Union, we are spending less than 4% for prevention. And do we need there a mindset and say, okay, we are going to be aware of what is possible.
To do something on awareness is always good. And of course, if you have the smartphone always in your hand, perhaps you can have an app that shows you, okay, now you are 2 hours on your mobile, please move, do something for your body, have a walk, have one, go swimming, do cycling, whatsoever. So in a way, perhaps we can have some healthcare apps that guide you through the day. That might be something.
Yes.
If it's not the mindset as so,
it's a great idea. Maybe we are going to start a app company.
Yeah.
But there are so many creative minds that we have in Germany, here in Europe, in Lower Saxony, who are inventing stuff, who are thinking, okay, how could we do our life better? And shouldn't we have, for example, more, public-private partnership initiatives regarding health, regarding prevention?
Although on public-private partnerships, it's a good idea always, because if the state as such is involved, it's from time to time it gets bureaucratic and complicated, and so it's easier with private company, with the spirit of entrepreneurs. They want to run a business and to make a good product. I would prefer a public-private partnership and not the state going into that business.
Okay, why you are saying this?
Because I think it's always the second best option to do this as a public approach, but a private, they are more result-oriented.
And how can we help them that they can achieve more beautiful things in the future in the healthcare system, for example?
But if it is not forbidden by regulation, there is no limit, except no limit, and you can invent. So if you work within the rules, you can really, if you are creative, you can find your solution and your market opportunities.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much for the time that we had here together. I wish you a lot of success, and I'm happy for the people of Lower Saxony that they are well represented, and we see us next time.
Thank you very much.